Hey y'all, happy Sunday. Hope everything is going well for you and yours. This is the portion of the show where we let YouTube send out the notifications via social media, let folks know that the broadcast is getting ready to start. We'll sit here and we'll count down the next 2 minutes before I push that button and go live. If you happen to be watching this on replay, go ahead and scrub past this graphic until you see my smiling face. If you have any questions and you're joining us today in the live chat, feel free to go ahead and add those questions to the live chat now, and we'll get to them in due course during this live Q&A session. So, sit back, relax, grab a beverage, and we'll get going in about 30 seconds. Hey y'all, happy Sunday. Welcome to live Q&A number 110 from the Shop Shed. I haven't had the opportunity to work on the Shop Shed at all for the last couple of weeks, just simply because I've got a couple of landscape projects that are taking precedence and I'm racing weather out there, hoping like heck I beat it. So there isn't anything to report on the Shop Shed other than it is getting used right now. So in fact, I had to make a little project for my wife about 3-4 days ago for her loom. And that was the actual first project that was built out here in the Shop Shed. So she gets that distinction. So let's see. Today is the video I did on the using the array copy toolpath option in Cut 2D, VCarve, and Aspire. And I didn't make that distinction in the video, and I really should have. It is available in all three as far as I know. So I had a few comments over on the YouTube side in the comments to the video that I'm going to get to them before I start answering your questions, because they are good, pertinent comments that I didn't address and I really should have. Let's see. The first one was a huge pro tip from Michael Mazalik. And it's one of those things that I absolutely, completely forgot about, but is 100% the case. And that is when you're 3D carving. And this is whether you're using the copy array toolpath option or not. When you're doing a 3D carve, you want to use the smallest job size in your job setup that you can get away with. Now, in the example that I gave in the carving the 3D stars, what I should have actually done is, knowing that my material was 24 by 24, I should have actually sized my job size at 12 by 12. And because what that does is the resolution on a piece of material that's 12 by 12 is going to be better than on something 24 by 24. By making your material size for that one star, for optimizing the material size for that one star, you're allow yourself better resolution. And if you look at, let me go into Aspire here and I'll show you what I mean. Let me get back over here and screen share. I really need to get a screen deck. I really do. Okay. And we'll get back over here into the star. Now, I have my job size set up at 24 by 24, the same as I had um, in the demonstration. So if I go over here to job size and I look down here on the modeling resolution, I have it set for very high. And if you look, I don't know if you can see it here or not, and I can't highlight it, but underneath very high, it says it's using 4 million points. It's spreading those 4 million points over a surface that's 24 by 24. If I reduce my job size down to 12 by 12, let me do that now. 12 by 12, update. Okay, come down here, click OK. It's going to tell me I need to redo my toolpaths. And oh, it didn't tell me. What do you know? Okay. And select those. And we'll hit F9 on the keyboard. Uh-oh. Suddenly it blanked out. Okay. Oh, that's because of I'm on my laptop. I'll just align it this way. My laptop uses that F9 button for something else. Well, anyway, the point of this is now that I've reduced my job size down to 12 by 12, those 4 million points are being spread over a smaller surface area. So I'm going to get better resolution than if I use that full 24 by 24. Does that make sense? It's, as I said, basically what it's doing is instead of spreading those 4 million points over that huge area, it's now concentrating those 4 million points on what actually matters. And I will have to recalculate the toolpaths now that I've changed the material setup. So I'll go back and recalculate. And as soon as it's finished here, it'll let me know. Come along, Aspire. This poor old laptop. Okay, there we go. We've got, whoops, now we're on sheet 2. Okay. Yeah, I know. We're just doing sheet 1. Okay, so from there, even though I just have the single star, I can still put a 24 by 24 piece of material on the machine and it will carve all 4 to this resolution. And Michael's absolutely right. And now you know why he's my 3D guru. This is one of those things that I just plain and simply forgot about when you're doing any kind of 3D carving, not just with the array copy toolpath. When you're doing any kind of 3D carving, optimize your resolution by using the smallest area, surface area that you're going to be carving the model on. You know, you wouldn't want to spread those 4 million points over an 8-foot by 4-foot sheet of plywood. You'd want to concentrate them on the area that you're actually going to be carving. So that was my point in that. So let me get back over here to where you guys are, if that makes sense to you. So, but that was an excellent tip. And thank you, Michael. You're absolutely right. Another question over here in the comments was, can the array copy toolpath, this is Joe Delora asked this question, could the array copy toolpath be applied to different sheets? So like the star in this video, but I need to cut multiples out of different size boards. Could I add sheets that are the size of the boards that I have and then array copy toolpath to those different sheets? The short answer is no, not that I know of yet. I have not found a way to do that. I did attempt, which is why you saw different sheets on this demo that I just did when I recalculated the toolpath. It tried to recalculate toolpaths for sheet 2. Basically, you can there has to be geometry on that second sheet. So you would have to calculate a toolpath for each sheet that you have. And I can't find a way to copy a toolpath from one sheet to another. You would still have to put, for instance, the star. You would still have to put a star over on the other sheet and then calculate the toolpath for that. But as I just said, in talking about Michael Mazalik's tip, you would want to use the smallest possible and then use the array copy toolpath for each sheet. So you would still have to, like for instance, sheet 1, you want to do 24 by 24. You would do it just the way I did it. Sheet 2 is 24 by 36. You would still need to move a star and the associated vectors over onto that sheet, calculate a toolpath, then array copy to fill out that sheet, if that makes any sense. So each sheet would have to be handled separately, but you would still need to put that geometry on that sheet because there's nothing there for it to calculate. And there's no way of copying those tool paths over to another sheet. That option isn't there. Because if you think about it, if there's no geometry, there's no tool path. So that's the long answer to that question. It does not work with sheets that I have seen. Okay, the next question was kind of twofold. And let's see. This is Steve Rowe asked this question. He says it's two-prong for the star offset roughing toolpath. It appears that the adjacent stars are very close together and could possibly overlap. Does the software recognize potential interferences between adjacent stars? No, it does not. And that's why it's important for us to get in and when we're designing, number one, keep the tool that you're going to be using in mind. Like when I was positioning those stars, when I separated them, I wanted enough space to allow my 1/4-inch end mill to go through and cut those stars out individually. I was thinking that as I was designing that. And that's why I put as much space between the stars as I did, because I wanted to make sure I could get the 1/4-inch end mill in there without it running into the next star, either to the side or up above. So it's keeping the tool in mind as you're designing. And that's also why it's important for us to preview, make adjustments if we need to, reset that preview and preview again. Because that has happened to me in a design. I'll set up the preview and preview the tool paths, and a V-carve runs into an area that I don't want it to go. So I have to reduce the size of a V-carving, maybe adjust the font or shrink down the size of my text so that the V-bit doesn't run into an edge of a recess that I'm trying to V-carve into or something like that. It's just keeping things like that in your mind as you're designing, then preview early, preview often, reset those previews, and just make fine little adjustments as you go. It sounds like it should be something that's intuitive and it should alert you to a potential overlap, But to be honest, it doesn't know what kind of bit you're going to use until you get over into start toolpathing. And I may use a 1/4 inch bit to cut out one star and then an 1/8 inch bit to cut out the next one. It doesn't know that until I create the toolpaths. So it I guess there is a capacity there or the potential there to add that to where if you have one toolpath calculated, if it's going to interfere with another toolpath or the next toolpath you're calculating is going to interfere with one you already have calculated, I could see the potential to add a warning there. But as it sits right now, no, that doesn't exist yet. So never say never. Okay, and the next one was in this video, the array copy toolpath video at around the 27-minute mark, I set the cut depth for the profile cut by formula by subtracting the start depth from the material thickness. I noticed the screen have what appears to be parameters, D for start depth and C for cut depth up in the profile cutout form. Was wondering if you could just enter D in the formula instead of the 20 thousandths thickness that I entered. And let me bring up Aspire again to show what he's referring to. And of course, I have to screen share first. I don't know why I did that. Let's get over here and do this. Now let's bring it up. What he is, let me undraw these, close that, and we'll go up here. What he's referring to is up here, the start depth says D and cut depth says C. And he's wondering if the calculators will figure this out using these as variables. The short answer is no. I tried it, and no, it doesn't do that. But as I answered him in the comment, it was either this worldwide user group meeting this year or it was last year. One of the presenters did a presentation that included how to set up calculators in these blanks so that I could enter, let's say, a start depth of 0.25 and then come along and say Z for my material thickness minus D for my start depth and hit equals. And you see, I don't get, there's a syntax error. It doesn't recognize D up here. Now, maybe I'm not using the right variable for this, but I'm going to try to find that presentation and make sure that I'm not wrong about that. But I believe a part of that, and it was just a small one mentioned in passing. The presenter, and I don't remember who it was, the presenter talked about how to enter different variables and create that calculator. So I'll look for that, and if I find it, I will certainly do a video on it. But and Suicidal at All Times says capital D maybe. That's possible, but generally speaking, they don't go by that. Now it did say syntax error. It might need a capital, but I haven't played with it enough to find out. But I seem to remember that one of the presenters was talking about creating and adding variables so that you could create your own calculator like that if it's something that you use quite often. So, but generally the rule of thumb is take your material thickness, subtract your start depth, and then that is the cut depth that you want when you're starting down lower in a profile cut or a pocket or something like that. So, and there are exceptions to that. If you're doing, if you're putting text on a 3D model or something like that, You project it onto the 3D model, and you don't have to enter a start depth because it knows where to start. Suicidal at all times says he may have added code to the program. Yes, that's exactly what I'm talking about. But it was in a presentation, and when I find out how to do that, I will definitely do a video on it, because there are a lot of neat little calculators built in, but I don't think they thought of every single possible permutation, just simply because it's never come up. And that's why I'm such a fan and a supporter of, and why I recommend to people all the time, that when they come up with little things like this and questions like this, it's fine to ask me. If I have an answer, I'll let you know. And if I don't have an answer, I'll let you know that too, and try to send you in the right direction. But send a email to Vectric support, because they may have the answer right there. And if not, if they get enough requests for something like that, they'll add it in the next update. Oh, maybe not the next update, but a good number of the features the software has right now are the result of people suggesting additions. They're always looking for ways to improve. And if you have something like that, the ability to, enter the start depth and then subtract it from your material thickness right there, and not have to do the math yourself. If they haven't thought of that, if enough people request it, they'll do it. That's how they come up with their ideas. So, by all means. And I'm not the end all and be all, believe me. There is more I don't know about this software than I do know, and that's just simply because I haven't used it yet. Okay, and the next one was, very last one was, from Russell Faraday, who I know is here in the chat, who asked on the array copy toolpath, what about two-sided toolpaths? So two-sided machining projects. I haven't done any experimentation with the I haven't done any experimentation with this on a two-sided project yet. Now, I could see where it could be a challenge, in that you have to remember which direction you're flipping your material. And I don't think you can copy. I haven't looked into it yet. This is just, I'm going off the top of my head. I don't think you can copy a toolpath to the opposite side. So the potential is there to not have things line up. So if, I'm cutting, this is my piece, and I flip it this way, it's now on the opposite end. That's something you would have to remember when you're array copying the toolpath. I'm sure it can be done. But much like there used to be a lot of fuss and feathers when it came to rest machining in the older versions, they have since added that capability, rest machining, to the roughing and finishing toolpaths, or excuse me, to the finishing toolpath. Perhaps they'll add that. Maybe there's the same amount of fuss and feathers to get array copy toolpath on a double-sided project. I'm not sure yet. Maybe the ability to copy a toolpath to the opposite side is forthcoming. I don't know. But all good questions. And I'm going to continue to explore this. Like I said, this came out in, I believe I said version 9.5. Maybe it was version 10 or 10.5. I don't remember when the array copy toolpath came along. I never knew it existed. I didn't realize it existed until somebody asked me, what's the difference between array copy and array copy toolpath? And I had to look into it, and holy cow, this is a time saver. Why did I not know this was there? So I'm still just getting into it. But what I did learn about it just in researching for this video, I mean, like I said, the first thing that popped into my brain was the folks who want to create the holes for the threaded inserts. And yes, I know not everybody uses that type of insert. And yes, I know the center, and nobody called me on it yet. The center hole for that threaded insert is too small. Should have been 5/16, not a quarter of an inch. But anyway, um, that was the first thing I thought of. People going crazy trying to get all of those holes drawn up and lined up when you can just do one and then copy the toolpath for the entire spoil board. I thought, wow, what a time saver. Major time saver. Okay, now let's get to your questions. Now that I'm done with those, I hope I answered everybody's questions okay that were there in the comments before we even got started. Let's see here. Kind of cruising down the list here. Norm Peterson basically just echoed what I just said. The video this morning was one of the best time savers you've done. Didn't even know it was there. Yeah, I didn't know it was there either. You know, although I do have to say, Norm, have done a couple of videos about the linear arrays, the regular array copy for vectors. So the cut and paste thing, that's a ton of work. Oh my gosh, that's a ton of work. Okay, Malcolm Temporal said, would it be possible to change the size of the wood after you have bits on the screen so you can make your work bigger? As I just showed, unintentionally answering your question, as I just showed, yes, you can increase your job size by simply going back into job setup, enter new geometry, new width in X or height in Y, and even thickness. If you have calculated tool paths, you will need to recalculate those tool paths. But if you haven't calculated the tool paths yet, just it's easy to do. Just go into your job setup, enter your new dimensions, click OK. Then you can go back and center your work or position it where you want to do it, and everything is fine. You can basically change anything in any of this until the time that bit touches the material. After that, it's permanent, semi-permanent. That's why I call my planer the eraser. If at first succeed, eliminate any evidence of the attempt. But you can change just about everything until the time that bit touches that wood. Then it's a little bit more difficult. So let's see here. Rick French, unfortunately, explained it so well, I can't even think of a question. Oh, come on, Rick, you're not trying. Let's see here. And let's see, coming down here for questions. Well, come on, folks, you got to have questions. Okay. Richard Canton says, do you always cut your keyhole slots horizontally? Not always. Most of the time I do, because that gives you more leeway, especially on something that you have 3D carved. It depends upon the carving. If it's not 100% symmetrical, let's say, for example, you do a 3D carving of a big elk or deer. One end of that piece of wood is going to have more material carved away from it just by the shape of the 3D model. And not only that, you have wood densities and what have you. So when you go to hang that on the wall, the nail in that keyhole slot or screw or whatever you use may or may not end up exactly in the center of that material. So I find by having about a 1 inch, maybe 2 inch long keyhole horizontal, I can slide that piece back and forth sideways to get it to balance and hang straight. Now, that's not always the case. There are times that I will use a vertical keyhole, and they're about 3/4 of an inch tall total. but I would say probably 99%, 98, 99% of the keyholes I cut are horizontal because they're more flexible. So, let's see. Yeah, John is, his keyholes are vertical upside down, and you now know why all of his projects he's using his baseboards. So, let's see here. And Bob Frail says in Array Copy Toolpath, if you used 1/4 inch end mill for the profile, how would the program cut if you still select minimize tool changes? Does it do both rough and profile before finish? No, it takes them in order. Now, what I did not demonstrate is that's just calculating the tool paths. You now have to go save G code. And when you save G code, it's going to separate that into separate files. I always make my profile cutout the last thing I do. And it's always a separate piece of G code so I don't mess it up. For just this type of a situation, using a 1/4 inch end mill for the roughing tool path and for the profile cutout. Obviously, I don't want to cut it out before I do the 3D finishing. So I will separate it out and it's its own separate piece of G code so I don't mess it up. That's just for me because I know my luck. That one time I'll forget and it'll cut out the part before all the machining is done. That's just what it's like to be me. So, okay. Let's see here. Lewis Denton says, if you purchase a G-code ready 3D image, how difficult is it to resize the image? If can and do, you logically do have to recalculate the tool paths. I don't know what you mean by a G-code ready 3D image. If you mean something from Design and Make, where it was created in Aspire and it's ready to go, you will still have to scale it and calculate your tool paths and what have you. When people say G code ready, what they generally mean is you shouldn't have to do any editing of the model. Personally, I think of G code ready in the same way I think of one size fits all. It isn't, because it isn't, you know. G code ready, you would still need to get in and make sure, number one, that you have those tools. Number two, any feeds and speeds they have set are safe and appropriate for your machine. I mean, I know people that design 3D models and program them set to run at 2,000 inches per minute, just simply because the preview goes faster that way. And they don't change it. Well, I don't know anybody that owns a machine that's capable of cutting 2,000 inches per minute. Maybe you do, but I sure don't. So you always have to get in and look at everything before you calculate those tool paths. So if there are any tool paths included in the file, yes, you will need to get in and recalculate those tool paths for your machine, for your tools, for your machine based on feeds and speeds and the material. Because even if your machine is capable of the feeds and speeds they have set, the feed rate for hard maple is different than the feed rate for high density urethane foam. So feeds and speeds are not a set it and forget it kind of a thing. There's always going to be some adjustment there. Just based on different materials, different machines, different tools, different variables like that. So let's see here. Okay, suicidal at all times. I made a squirrel cage for my new AC and used an oval to make the blades. When I previewed it, it's not smooth lines. Is it just graphics or something I need to perform to make smooth? Let me share here. We'll get back into Aspire and I'll show it on this down here. Um, Zoomed in on this one circle right here, and I'll go into node editing. It's basically 4 points. So there's not really a lot of smoothing I need to do on this circle. There is no smoothing I can do. But what you'll want to do, especially on that oval, if you have copied it and used that for your squirrel cage design, select the vector and then come over here, fit curve to selected vectors. Now, this is a bad example because, as I say, there's only 4 points, but check circular arcs, check Bezier curves, and preview them. Look to see how you can reduce the number of points. It depends upon what program you drew this in. If it was drawn in VCarve, well, it still might add a bunch of points as you copy and move things around, especially if you've done any trimming. But you'll want to fit curves and go for the fitting type that gives you the least number of points. Okay. I'm going to cancel that because I don't want to change that. But that's what you're looking for, the least number of points. Another thing that you should look into is your display resolution in your preview. Go up here to view, I believe it's it. No, it's not in view. Is it in? Here it is. In the Toolpaths menu, look at preview simulation quality. Like this one right now is set for standard. Generally, I keep it at maximum. So it's Toolpaths, preview simulation quality, and I set for maximum. And basically what that does is over here in your 3D view, of course, I haven't previewed this yet. There we go. And I'll go ahead and preview all just for giggles. Oh, that's this one. It's not the star. Never mind. Let me cancel that. Okay. Well, I can still do it here. The preview quality is much better with that display quality set at maximum than it is on standard. It in just like any other kind of digital imaging, the number of pixels used to display the image, the higher that number, the better the detail. Now, there may not be anything wrong with your drawing itself. It may all be in the display that you're not seeing everything in as high a resolution as you could. But that's where I would start. First thing I would do is I would start with the preview simulation quality, because that doesn't make any changes at all to the drawing. And if that isn't the issue, I would then go back and go over here to let's close that, back over here into the drawing tab, select those vectors and fit curves to it. That will reduce the number of points and I tend to use Bezier curves over here because that tends to reduce the number of points better than either circular arcs and certainly better than straight lines. So I hope that answers that. Let's see here. Now let's pop down to the bottom here for a minute. Let's see. I don't mind the display as long as it carves smooth. Well, that's the best way to find out if you are getting, excuse me, that's the best way to find out if you have a smooth carve, is to look at the preview in the best resolution you can look at it in. Because if it looks smooth on the preview, it should be that way on the actual carve itself. Now, it also depends on how you have your machine set up, your controller set up, everything else. Are you using constant velocity? Are you using, something else? It, but it should give you the same thing you see in that preview. So let's see here. Let me go through here, and I think I've almost maybe caught up here. Suicidal at all times. If at first I don't succeed, well, this will be deeper than I thought carving. Yeah, that's why I call my planer the eraser. I'm serious. If you notice in my demonstrations, I usually set a flat depth of 0.1 because I can plane that off and still have a good, thick, usable piece of material. If I go carving a quarter of an inch or half inch deep, it's firewood. I and I'm cheap. Let's see here. Let's go here. Okay, Percy Kuka says, just to double check, bumping up the feed on the go beyond the feed rate set on the program doesn't really reduce the machine time during carving. Sure it does. It reduces the machine time on the carving based on just how fast that bit's moving through the material. So if you bump the feed rate up 10%, you should have a corresponding, let's say, 8 to 10% reduction in the amount of time it takes for that specific tool path. So, there's a lot of variables in play. There are certain materials that I will bump up the feed rate. And there are certain materials where I actually have to slow it down. Wood is, wood is a reflection of Mother Nature. It's denser in some places than it is in others. And I'll find, especially carving in hard maple, if you get into a particularly curly area, the wood density, it's like carving stone, but then you get out to more even grain and it's cuts like butter. So it's trying to find that happy medium where you've got speed, but you've also got quality. Because at the end of the day, that's the most important factor. Doesn't matter how fast you can cut it if it looks like garbage when you're done. So I try to go for the best quality I can get. And if it takes longer than some folks think it should, so be it. But I'm a home hobbyist. I'm not trying to put out 1,000 parts a day. But yes, if you speed up the feed rate, there should be a corresponding reduction in the amount of time it takes to machine that part. So let's see. Eric Thompson says, do you know if it is possible to use my bit setter on my Shapeoko Pro with the G-Sender software? The short answer is no. I don't have a Shapeoko and I don't have the bit setter and I don't use G-Sender software. That would be a good question over on the Shapeoko support forum. And because believe me, you are not the first person to have that question. So if you go over to Shapeoko's website and look for the support forum or support community, look for those. Get in there and do a search. I bet you somebody has asked that question. I'm a big fan and a big supporter of support forums and support communities because the membership is usually made up of people like you and me, the folks that use the software, that use the machines, that use the tools. And if you have a question, odds are you're not the first person with that question. And somebody in Chicago may have run into the same issue and got an answer or found an answer and has posted it there. So I would head over to the Shapeoko support forum or support community and ask that question there. I'm sorry I can't help you, but I don't have a Shapeoko and I don't use G-Sender. So I'm not sure. It would seem to me you should, but I don't know. Let's see. Is the camera not focused? Very hard to follow. Is that on my screen share? Don't know. Don't know. If that was on my screen share, please let me know, because I may need to do some tweaking. I'm on my old work laptop out here in the shop shed that I used to use in real estate. So it's not built for graphics. So it doesn't have a lot of RAM. It doesn't have a lot of, what is it? It's a Intel i3. So I may be pushing it, trying to run 2 sessions of Aspire. That may be the problem that we're having, but do let me know. Let's see. Let's see. Rob Schuster says bumping up the speed might not speed things up if there is a lot of starting and stopping involved. Example, some 3D. Good point. Acceleration and deceleration might be more important than inches per minute. Another good point. Remember that the machine is always going to move at the rate of the slowest axis. And the slowest axis is almost always going to be the Z axis. That's your plunge rate. Normally, plunge rate is set to approximately 1/2 of the feed rate. It can be higher, it can be lower, depending upon the material you're using, or you're cutting rather. On 3D carves, the Z is going to be the slowest. And so if you have, using round numbers, if you have your feed rate set at 100 inches per minute and your plunge rate set at 50 inches per minute, that machine is going to run at 50 inches per minute. It's going to move at the rate of the slowest axis because it can't outperform the slowest axis. That's when tool damage and machine damage happen. On a 3D carve, if you use a roughing toolpath, and this is one of the reasons why I do use a roughing toolpath. A lot of people don't, and that's fine. If it works for you, great. If you use a 3D roughing toolpath and set that machining allowance at 20 to 30 thousandths of an inch, that's a very small amount for that finishing toolpath and that finishing tool to come back and clean up. I'll set my plunge rate for that project at the same as my feed rate because there's not a lot of potential for that bit to plunge down real deep into a piece of material and snap as it starts to try to take off. By removing most of that material, I can speed up that 3D finishing tool path to the same as my feed rate, set the plunge rate to the same as my feed rate, and that'll cut the machine time in half easily. But yes, Rob is 100% right. If there's a lot of starting and stopping in the tool path, the feed rate, adjusting the feed rate may or may not give you that much of a reduction. It all depends on what it's doing. So, also the acceleration and deceleration. Now that's getting into nuts and bolts of the CNC. I know Rob and I believe you use Mach 3, don't you, Rob? We can set up our acceleration and deceleration of the machine as well as the feed rates and what have you. So what I'm getting at is the acceleration. Let's say you set it for, I set mine at 4, meaning it's going to take 4 seconds to get up to the max speed. I can set it at 2, which means it'll speed up faster. Only take 2 seconds to get up to that max speed. So that's one of those settings that you have to play with. But I got better results set up at 4 because the bit wasn't trying to speed up real fast and jolt the machine. So, okay, Rob uses Linux CNC. So, and that system may be a little bit different, but I have my acceleration set to, let's see, my max is 200 inches per minute, and it takes 4 seconds to get up to 200 inches per minute. So, okay, let's see. Let's cruise on down. Brooks Martin, good on you, Mark, for not trying to answer questions out of your wheelhouse and not leaving it there and suggesting places to look. I'm all about nobody you'd want to talk to anyway knows everything. And believe me, if I don't know, I'm going to let you know. But I don't want to leave you hanging. So I'm at least going to try to find a place to look. Sometimes I have to leave you hanging, kind of like the questions I got about two-sided machining and the array copy toolpath. I just don't have an answer for you right now. But I'm going to get into it and try to find one. So that's fun to me. That's, somebody says you can't do something. Well, why not? What happens if you do this? Oh, that's why you can't do it that way. That's a legit result. So, that's fun to me. Okay, let's see. We have Steve Martin. We're going to have to wrap this up pretty quick here. Evening, Mark, from the far side of the pond. Currently making new MDF bed for my machine. What clamp hole distance do you recommend? 2-inch 50 millimeter or 3-inch 75 millimeter? The choice is yours. There is no best. The best is what works for you. Personally, if it were me, well, do an honest assessment of what you plan to be carving most. I mean, everybody wants to be able to put a full-size sheet of plywood on their machine, but how often are you really going to do that? If most of what you're going to be cutting can be clamped down with a 2-inch grid, I would use that personally, mainly because the clamps would be stiffer. The shorter the clamp, the stiffer it is. If what you plan on carving can't be held down with a 2-inch grid, if it's an odd size or something like that, then go for the 3-inch. Another way to look at it is, how many holes do you want to drill and how many inserts do you want to buy? There really is no best. It's whatever works for you. And like I said, take an honest assessment of what you plan on carving. I will say in my situation, I would say about 99% of what I carve is done in a footprint of about 16 inches wide by about 11 inches tall. I rarely go bigger than that. So building my machine the size I built it was overkill. I don't need it because I don't use it. So, but you know the deal. When you're building a machine, bigger is always better. Yep. Until you use it. Okay, let's see. Percy Kuka, recently I carved a set of 13 by 13, a very intricate design on WPC wood plastic composite, where the feed was set at 130. Okay, I took 3 hours of PC, then increased on the go to 300. The time difference was just about 3 minutes. Again, you said yourself, a very intricate design. And what did you set? The feed rate was set at 130. What was your plunge rate? That's the difference. It's not running at your feed rate. It's running at the plunge rate on an intricate 3D carve. So again, roughing toolpath, a very small machining allowance, then come back with the 3D finishing toolpath. In fact, I did a video on that, reducing 3D machining times. and I showed exactly that. I did a time comparison, the whole thing. I will put a link to that video in the description of this video as soon as we're done live here, which is going to be in just a couple of minutes because we've been on for almost an hour already. So, yeah, I will find that video and post a link to it down in the description. Let's see. Russell Faraday. If someone says they know everything, run. Yes, at hyperspeed. Let's see. What one man can do, another can do. Anthony Hopkins in The Edge. And within certain limitations, yes. So, okay, Percy, there's your answer right there. There's your answer right there. Your machine was running at 50 inches per minute. So speed up that plunge rate, you will speed up the amount of time it took to carve that. Okay, let's go ahead and wrap this up. I have absolutely no idea what the next video is going to be. Next week will be live open Q&A. Bring your questions, bring your answers, bring a beverage. And I hope I got everybody's questions answered to their satisfaction. If not, put them in the comment section and I will try like crazy to get to them. I know I've kind of been AWOL on social media lately. I just have so much stuff going on. It's not even funny. I'm an old man moving gravel right now, and I'm racing weather to get this done. And I may win. We'll see. You'll notice that there was no link to Michael Mazalik's video this week because I don't think he has set one up. I could be wrong. Again, I'm kind of AWOL from social media this week. I will go double check. If he does have one and you're not subscribed, shame on you. If he does have one, see you over there. I want to say thank you to everybody who's used the super chats and super stickers, and especially a big, huge thank you to everybody who has hit those donation links down in the description. I appreciate you guys more than you will ever know, more than you'll ever know. And until next week, let's get this put in the can. See you then. Y'all have a good week. Go do something cool. Make some chips. But most of all, remember to have fun. That's what this is about. So, y'all take care. Thank you very much